Welcome to the Dash Group Chat Podcast. I am your host. They call me G. And today we're accompanied by a good friend of the podcast. She's a wellness coach focusing on fitness, nutrition, mental health, and lifestyle. She focuses primarily on helping her customers reach sustainable habits through exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, Finnelis, Aleman. How are you?
Damn, that sounds that sounds official.
You know, I gotta work on my intros. I gotta work on my
it.
intros. It took me a while to memorize, but yeah. Well, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you for this opportunity for this podcast and all that good stuff. So, how you been?
I've been great. I love your setup. The
thank you.
colors, everything. It's very warm and toned, so I like it.
Thank you. You know, I got the dim lights. I got the vibe set up right
Got
here,
the
right?
vibe.
Yeah.
You definitely got it.
You know, it's funny because the way this podcast came about, I feel like you went through a YouTube tunnel with me, and you was like, you know what? Let me hit him on the DMs to see if we would like to do this and collaborate. And you know, here we are. And you know, I appreciate you for coming and allowing this to happen. So let's start off with something that's near and dear to your heart. How did you get into, like, what was your journey like in the beginning of becoming a wellness coach? Like, what inspired you?
So it's interesting because it wasn't even my story that inspired me.
Right.
It was mainly, so in 2021, my mother went through a very mental health crisis. Wow. And I feel like when you have someone going through a mental health crisis, it's very hard for you to help them because it's them that need to battle that war, like, let's say, right, mentally.
Right.
And so for me, it was more of like, okay, well, what can I do that will help her, shift her lifestyle? Mm-hmm. And so I remember praying for it, and like I got one clear answer, and it was like, just change her food. Like, you change your food and things will change. Yeah. And so I remember in my journey when I started, once I started changing the food, I did remember like having like that mental drastic shift. So with my mom's journey, I took her to my house and I started just introducing her to the lifestyle that I was doing, right? So like in the morning, like I'll start like very slow. We'll do tea together. We'll go for afternoon walks and she will eat whatever I ate. Right. And it was like 4 days later that she came to me and she's like, she had like these like old medications, like that she just had. And she's like, I don't want these. Like, I don't need them. Yeah. And I was like, okay, no questions asked. Like, I'm just going to take them and like, we'll continue. And it was seeing the shifts that she did that made me say like, okay, well, I can't keep this for my own. Like, I need to share this and help other people. So that's really where everything started. It was just me seeing the capabilities that I was able to help her and be able to help someone else though.
Wow, that's interesting, man, because mental health is definitely it's a burden for a lot of people. They're going through it. A lot of people don't even recognize that they're there yet, and life just keeps going. You just keep on adding pressures. You keep on adding stress. You keep on working. You're always having something to achieve. There's always a goal. There's always something that you have to do. You forget about yourself in the process. You just completely forget about yourself, and you do what you're supposed to do, responsibilities. And then by the time you look back, you just have all this baggage on you that you didn't even realize, and you didn't even look back and check. And it's tough because once you realize it, a lot of times it feels like it's too late.
Yeah.
It feels like now you have that, it's too late burden on you. For me to actually check off all those boxes that I didn't check off throughout the process.
Right.
And then at that point, you don't know who to reach out to. You never really, it's not that you didn't believe, but you never really like looked at a mental health professional or, seek that help. People generally rely on their family.
Yes.
Right? People generally rely on someone that is that may be able to help you to some extent, but not professionally.
100%. And I love that you also said, like, we don't notice the signs ourselves, but we also don't realize how close it could be around your family members or around your friends. And like I say that because it really took me off guard when I heard about her incident. Because I speak to my mom every single day.
Yeah.
Like we'll talk and it's like, you know, like you hear someone struggling and in your mind, it's like you sort of like feel that they're going to handle it the same way you handle the problems.
Right.
Right? Like with the same attitude. And when that doesn't happen, you sort of have like this, you hear stories of like tragic that happens and people ask like, but you didn't see no signs? And you're like, well, no, like, you know, this person had this issue and that issue, but you would never think, you know? And so mental health could really be like right under your nose.
Yeah.
And you don't notice it because it could spark like this.
Yeah, and then of course you don't notice it because you got your own things to deal with, your own traumas. People around you are going through their own things. You know, when I've battled with mental health myself, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be very transparent and let you know about that. And I didn't notice it until, you know, until I reached an age where I kind of like had this epiphany, and I looked at myself in the mirror deep, thinking, you know, why do these issues keep coming up? Why do these thoughts keep coming up? And I had to go back, even like to my childhood, because you know, I'm seeing a mental health professional now, and they tell me, you know, trauma could come at any time. You know, you could be dealing with certain things in your life, but there's no say on when it's gonna come up.
Right.
There's no say on when you're gonna be challenged with that. And then this is what a lot of people don't do, right? A lot of people don't really look back. A lot of people, like I said, they rely on their immediate friends, and you know, the friend who may be a good or bad friend, or well-intentioned friend, doesn't really have the answers or the tools for you either.
100%.
They're just going based off what they think they know that you need.
Yes.
And then it becomes a cycle. Then, because once I realized that I was dealing with a lot, I started looking a little bit deeper and looking at, wow, but I'm not the only one going through a lot. Everyone around me is going through a lot.
Right.
And their own challenges. So how can you help me?
Exactly.
Right? You know, I get it. We could feed off each other. We could connect. Your mother's lucky to have you because, you know, you had that. First of all, is your mother, right?
Yes.
You want to make sure you take care of her. You want to make sure that you're there for her in every type of way. But at the same time, you know, you want to make sure you connect with somebody that could truly understand what you're going through, the pains, the struggles. It's a lot.
Yeah.
As I'm here talking to you, I'm kind of like thinking about everything that I'm going through, and it's like, yeah, mental health is serious. It's nothing to play with, and you know, a lot of times you step away from friends, you step away from family, and it's not necessarily to hurt them or say, okay, you know what, I need to disconnect with you. It's just that at this point, I'm dealing with a lot, so I don't want to project, I don't want to bother. I'm just gonna deal with it.
Yeah.
And then you hide.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
The hiding process is real.
Yeah, yeah.
And you do it whether you want to be, you know, conscious about it or subconsciously.
Right.
But there is a hiding process
Right.
when it comes to, you know, that mental health shift. Like for me, 2020 was kind of like the opportunity for me.
Right.
Because I was always a person like, I have these goals and I have to meet this, you know, certain, like.
I could tell.
Okay, good. Like certain timeline. Like I had a whole timeline framed.
Yeah.
You know, from like 19 to 25. I'm like, I already knew like what's gonna happen in a sense, right? Like in my head.
Right.
And so 2020 for me was like, okay, this is your hiding
Phase.
Yes,
Right.
like this is your time, right? And so when I started to disconnect all the distractions, I mean family members, friends, and like not in a way of like cutting them out of like, you know.
Yeah, no.
But in a sense of like, you need to focus on what is it that you've been feeling. Like I've always had this feeling in my gut, like there's something more out there. Like use this time for that. And so I think I read like, I don't know, more than like 10 books like in 2020. Like it was like
Right.
Like a walk in nature, it's like the whole thing. Like I was doing the work, which is funny because I feel like God prepares us in certain ways that we don't really know, like how He's gonna utilize it later on,
Oh man, speak.
right? But
Lord, preach. Let's
yeah,
go.
exactly.
It's
But during
very
that
true.
time, it was when I was like investing in my own mental health journey, right? And then 2021 comes and my mom get hits, and I'm like, wait, like, and like I had this calling, like, you're the one that needs to help her.
Wow.
And I remember, like, how am I gonna do that? Like, how am I gonna help, someone that, I mean, she was like in a psychiatry hospital, like the whole thing. I had to like advocate for this woman to like get her out because I felt like I need to get her out the hospital. Like I can't, and like it was like a fight of like, am I being like a child that doesn't want to hit the reality of it?
Right.
Or is this really like something telling me to like,
It's God speaking through you.
yeah, seriously.
Right.
And so, I mean, it was a constant fight with the doctors. Like, the doctor was like, he called me. He's like, I need to meet you in person because you would have been a great lawyer.
Look
And I
at that.
was like, well, listen, I don't know about that. It's gonna be too late, but like that was not the career that I want. But I got my mother in, and through that journey,
Yeah.
she has turned around and like she calls me every day like how thankful she is and like her gratitude. Like she's so grateful like in life just to live. So I feel like in our own journey sometimes we don't realize like what is God calling us for, and it could really be to be served later on
It's
down the
always a
road.
service to others. That's
Yeah.
that's what I feel, and it's funny you mentioned that because even in hearing your story, like now, and this is, it all takes knowledge, right? Because if you know now, you know how to move forward in that process, in your purpose, right? So it's crazy as I'm hearing your story. God allowed your mother to have you because he could utilize you at a certain point in her life, right? So as you mentioned, we all have a purpose, right? With me, with this podcast, I had visions of this years ago. And it's 3 years later, and now the vision that I had 3 years ago is actually happening now.
Wow.
And it's insane. But now my vision now is totally different. And I could see it clear as day in a couple of years where this is going. And it's not for the views. It's not for the likes. It's none of that. Yes, you want to gain some traction. You want to gain some eyes and engagement. But when I thought about the Dad's Group Chat podcast, at first it was like, okay, we're going to talk about what we bring to the chat. Then the vision became clearer. It's like everybody needs a community to kind of like engage, someone to have feedback with, someone to share feedback, someone to give you advice, someone to be there for you, kind of like a connection. Everybody needs their own community.
They want to be seen.
Right. So, but at the same time, you want to have that to rely on.
Yes.
So I always tell my guests, do you have a community, a network of people that help you? Because look at this. You told me that you feel that your purpose is in one small instance, yes, you help your mother, but that also will give you clarity on what your purpose is, right?
100%.
But who takes care of you? Like what's your community like? Who's in that community that you could rely on?
Right.
So everything has a purpose.
Everything does. Like, I feel like that was my intro to my purpose. And the reason why what I do now, regardless of like all the obstacles that come, like that's my why.
It's amazing that we can share. This whole podcast journey for me is about sharing and helping, right? And I feel like I could definitely help brand new parents, parents to be, parents that are going through things. I'm going through things. I'm learning as I'm going. It's a lot being a parent and dealing with being a dad, my challenges, my upbringing, my relationship with my dad. It's like so many things are like wounds are being opened. now I'm like, oh my God, I need to close all these wounds before I bleed out. And it feels like it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of like, man, listen, I cry. I've never cried so much as I've never cried so much in my life than in the past like 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
Just realizing a lot of traumas and things that I went through. And it becomes more clear that this podcast could help somebody else because I'm willing to open up and let you know what I'm going through. So you going into that first, it was like, okay, this is what it's gonna be. Let's pause a little bit and let's get some tissues.
This is the time, yeah, seriously. Like, this is the time to open up. But I do like the whole purpose behind your podcast. And I feel like not in anything that you do, any project that you start, there has to be a deeper reason as to why you're doing it.
Right.
Because I'm pretty sure from the vision that you had 3 years ago to where you're at now, there were some roadblocks. There were things, challenging things that happened, you know? And I'm a huge believer that when it's like God's vision,
Oh, listen, man.
it's like everything else presents that goes against it. Like, for you to continue like fighting through, and like obviously now that you have this amazing place, right, to come in, but the purpose behind it, it's the one that kept you going.
Wow. Listen, you're striking nerves.
I'm so sorry.
You're striking
I
nerves.
should have warned you.
You're striking nerves, and it's like, wow, this is the conversation I was supposed to have today.
You want to switch?
I need to sit over there. You need to interview me. It's you mentioned roadblocks, and I went through a lot of roadblocks with this. You know what's crazy? Like you said, God's purpose, he puts it in you, and there's nothing that can shake that. You're gonna go through what he wants you to go through, regardless of how you come out of it on the other side. And be grateful, regardless.
Yes.
However you come out through the other side, you still gotta be grateful because he's utilizing you for a bigger purpose. There has been so many roadblocks in this podcast. I can't even start to tell you how many roadblocks. And every single time, me personally, I was like, I'm giving it up. This is not for me. This is never gonna be what I had in mind. And roadblock after roadblock, I saw this garage like skeletons, nothing, right? And I started the podcast before the house, got into the house, saw the space. I was like, okay, this. But throughout all that time of like what you may call, wow, a victory, he's moving forward, there was 10 times the roadblock. While this was being created, while the space was being created, I was like, this is not going to be it. It's not going to happen. Even to this day, I still feel like there's some challenges that I'm facing, but God's purpose is in me, man. I feel it. I see it. Even if I don't want to do it, it's kind of like I need to fulfill this.
Right.
I need to fulfill this vision. I need to see where this is going. And now I could tell you, even with the roadblocks and challenges that I have today, which are nothing similar to what I had previously, I'm in love with this. I'm in love with this process. I'm in love with the journey. I could go through peaks, valleys. I could go through anything, but I'm going to fulfill that vision.
Right.
Because God's vision is more powerful than mine.
100%.
I got to go. That's it. Wow. It's getting good. It's getting good. Anybody need tissues?
Good. No, we're good. We're good. So I'm not a crier.
Oh, okay.
I'm more, I wish I was. It's
Okay.
so weird. I'm the one that like gets to chew. So like
Yeah.
I'm like a cat. Like I'm over here like
You shared that what got you into this process of being a wellness coach, of being in this profession, because your mother came to you with her mental health state of mind. Where did the fitness come into place? How did you put the pieces together between mental health, fitness? How did this all, like, when did you see that vision?
I like that you mentioned that. So movement for me was always around my life, right? Like in a sense, like I was always a kid running around. So I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. So we're raised different. Like, we're raised outside, right? And so I was always the kid running around. In high school, I played sports, so I did track. College, I played volleyball. So movement I realized that there was a lot of things in my childhood that wasn't consistent.
Okay.
Basically, nothing was consistent besides my sister that was with me throughout the whole journey. And it was movement. Like, that's really how I was able to express my emotions, distract my emotions, like everything. That was all through movement. So to me, when I started my own journey, I took it to the gym, right? Like, it's like, okay, this is my playground where I challenge myself. This is a playground where I don't limit myself. Like, this is my room podcast in a sense,
Nice,
right?
nice.
Like, this is where I let it all out. And so when I started noticing how it was helping me,
Right.
mental health, and once you understand what movement does, like, your body releases chemicals that eventually, like, not eventually, like, after a workout, you notice how good you feel.
Immediately.
Right? Immediately. It's like, it's something that, like, it's a process that happens. Like, okay, you move, you walk, boom, you feel great. And so to me, I was like, okay, like, it relates to mental health, right? Like, you feel stressed, go take a 5-minute walk, come back and see how you feel. You have a tough decision to make, do a couple sit-ups and come back to it and see how you feel. Like, it really just helps you take that pause to release and come back to it. So that's where everything sort of was in connection with me.
Right.
Because I wasn't the person that felt the emotion. I didn't even know how to pinpoint them. That's why, like, the crying, like, I wish I was a crier.
Right.
Like, in a sense of, like, I wish I would feel them. Like,
But that's not your release. That's not
it's
your.
not
a
my
lot of
way
people, right.
to express that, right? You give me a dumbbell,
That's different. That's where you get your.
now we get personal,
Right.
but that's different. And so for my mom, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna get you at the gym, but we're gonna go for a walk, right? We're gonna go out there. So that's really how everything started to connect. Because at the end of the day, my vision for fitness, it wasn't to get the 6 packs.
Right.
It started like that when I was young, right? Like, for
Everybody's
the
vision.
aesthetics.
Right,
Right?
right.
You want the big butt and
All
the
that stuff.
tight waist. Like, I'm not mad about it, right? It
Right.
comes with the work.
Right.
But eventually it was more of like, no, this is the playground where I lay everything out.
Right.
So that's what I tried to do to my mom.
In it, and you mentioned like going for walks, right? And how that releases stress. You don't know how many walks I went through. Like, before I got the house, like those 5, 10, 30-minute walks around the neighborhood. And you know what I started doing? And maybe this is a thing, I don't know. Like, how people put their AirPods on? But I would put them and put that like sound elimination thing with no music. So I didn't even hear nothing. I may hear the leaves like at a distance, like moving around in the street, and it was just me and God. And that's how I kind of like release stress. There was a certain time that I did that. And I stopped. I should do that more, because you don't know how much that helped me.
Clarity.
It's just silence and extra silence at that point, because I had the what's it
Right.
called? The sound elimination thing
Yeah.
with the AirPods. And that gave me so much like stress relieving and anxiety relieving. And I think that allowed my purpose to kind of like be clearer
Yeah.
as well, because you're getting that peace, and everybody needs that inner peace a couple of times throughout the day.
100%. You connect with yourself. Like, you sort of like regroup, the reason, your thoughts, the reason you started where you're at.
Right.
Or, listen, like, even like in decisions with the business, like, sorry.
No problem.
Decisions, like, when you're an entrepreneur, there's so many things that fall under you. So you wear like 10 hats.
Speak about it.
Right? And so there's like the tiniest thing that, like, at times, like, I don't want to be making decisions like what I want to be for dinner. Like, it's that draining.
Right.
That when it comes to dinner, I'm like, I don't even want to think about like what I want to have for dinner. Right?
Yeah.
So those walks are so essential.
Right.
Like it's something that I love hiking. Like I love like being out in the nature and like doing everything. And so what I like to do is I love connecting it with the senses. So like how you mentioned that you block like the sound to just have
Right.
silence.
Right.
What I like to do is sort of connect with the sounds that are near me.
Oh, nice.
Right? And so like if I'm walking like
And you hear a
hiking,
creek.
then it's like, oh,
water.
what is that? Okay, that's a creek. Okay, you keep it moving.
Right.
And like it also helps you like stay present in the moment, right? But then just practice like when you're in the middle of chaos, wherever you're gonna be, you could just sit in that room and be like, all right, what do I hear right now so I can regroup my and the sense of the loud noise,
Right.
you can focus on one sound and it could just center you.
Right. I think it has a lot to do with nature itself. When you connect to nature, you connect to the earth. At that point, you can connect with God. At that point, everything becomes clearer. As I'm telling you this, I'm realizing this, and that happens a lot to me.
What?
It's kind of like I start talking, and it's like, wow, this is it. This is exactly what it is. It's like kind of like speaking to a therapist. I feel like I'm speaking to a therapist.
Listen,
As I'm
you're not the
speaking, it's like
only
I'm.
one. This is why I asked you. I was like, "Do you want me to ask questions?"
All right,
Because
man,
I
listen.
never get sit. I never sit on the other side.
Well, welcome to
I
the other
don't-
side.
I never sit on the side that like people ask questions like, "So what are your thoughts?" Like in a sense, right? I'm
Right.
always like, "Tell me about your deepest secret." Like, what
Yo,
is
listen.
it?
That's why I said, yo, let me sit over there real quick.
Sorry, I
No,
don't
but
mean
listen.
to. I think it's the coach in me that just comes out.
Listen, in this podcast, I like to make people feel comfortable. You could ask me anything. I'm an open book.
Awesome.
I'm trying to like get out of my shell too. While this is like 3 years old, it's still kind of like fairly new to me because every time it feels like it's just a brand new experience. And having these conversations, you don't know how many people we may help. That's the whole purpose of this.
Yeah.
We got to help other people because there are a lot of people out there who have never gone for that walk, have never connected with their inner self, always focusing on work, always focusing on school. Oh, my parents, my kids, everything going on around the world. And then you don't connect with yourself. And then that happens for one day and it's okay. You know, next day I'll get it. And then it starts happening. Then weeks start passing, months, years. And then you have all this built up trauma because it becomes trauma that you don't focus on, like we mentioned before.
Yeah.
And then you have to deal with it. Because one thing we all have to do is we all have to deal with ourselves at some point. We all have to look at that mirror at some point.
Yes.
Got a question for you.
Go ahead.
What are some common misconceptions that many of your customers face when it comes to fitness or mental health? What are some main misconceptions or common misconceptions that you hear most of the time with your customers?
One of the main ones, so because a lot of my clients, they come in mainly because of nutrition, right? Like at first, because it's interesting you're saying like a wellness coach, and that's really how I started like promoting myself. Nobody came to me asking me to change their habits.
Right.
Like there was nobody like, I want to like live a healthier life. Like it wasn't that. And like the healthier life that they were envisioning, it was more of like the way they physically looked. Yeah. And so a lot of people come to me for nutrition. And the main conception that people have is that if you eat more, you gain weight.
Is that not true?
No. Everybody's under eating.
Listen, I feel like
You guys are starving. Don't do that.
I gotta starve out here to get fit because
And it's so funny. I had that, right?
Right,
Like
right.
my biggest thing was nutrition. Like I was a child that 9 years old, like you would put me next to like, I grew up with like sort of cousins, you'll say, right?
Right.
They're like 10 years older than me and fit, like play basketball, the whole thing, right? You'll put my plate of food next to theirs. The only reason that was my plate is because it was in my chair. Like I was that child. I had no bottom when it came to food. And so for me, it was like, oh, you know, like diets, like I'm not a salad person. Like I like to eat, like, you
Right.
know? And so, but this whole time I was under eating. So I'm like
Wow.
over here thinking, like, you know, like I'm not fit or I don't have the six packs because I'm not the salad person. But that's like such a misconception. Like there is always something in this fitness lifestyle that will meet your needs.
Right.
Where that's why it's called lifestyle, right? Because
Right.
you can't live unhappy,
Right. No,
like
not at all.
right, like so yeah. So when it came to that, it's really a lot of people are under eating, man.
Listen, you say under eating, and I'm here thinking, I'm here counting my calories at this point. I'm like, okay, you know, we're all getting older, right? It's not like, and we spoke about this before the podcast. Like when I was in my 20s, it was like, yeah, the gym, all that good stuff, and then us, I don't know what it is about the guys. There's a misconception there too. Like we go to the gym for 2 months and we're like, bam, we're back where we was. But that changes as well. For me, my experience, it's changed. It's not the same. I'm 41 now, and I feel like I gotta do more
Okay.
to get back to where I was. And that involved, to me, in my mind, before you said it, that involves eating a lot less. So here I am counting my calories and stuff like that, trying to get fit. And, it's strange because we have nothing but McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, Subway, right? All that stuff around us that we just consume because we're in a rush. And that's a whole other thing, right? That's a whole different other conversation.
Yeah.
As we're rushing through life, working and all that good stuff, we need to eat. So we tend to go to the what's closest, what's fastest, and little do we know we're killing ourselves.
Yeah.
Eating all these foods. And then to top it off, I don't know about in your household, we're Dominican, so it's kind of like rice, beans, potato salad, and spaghetti.
Right. Right.
We kill ourselves like with that. So when you say under eating, dive into that a little bit more, because I know everybody's different, and everybody's is different,
Definitely,
right?
yeah.
How do you know what this person needs versus what that person needs?
Great question. So I base it all on age, sex, right? Whether you're a female, you're a male, their actual lifestyle. So are they always sitting, or do they actually work out? Do they go on walks? And then you base it on their goals and where they're currently at. So there's like a whole science behind it. But if you think about it, for you, you say that you were working out your 20s, right? And you had it all packed down. But then now come to your 40s and you feel like you had to do more. Well, there's a reason for that, right? Because perhaps you were working out in your 20s, but were you really feeding your body the way you were supposed to?
Probably not.
Correct. And so when it happens to it, your entire system for all these years has been on survival mode. It's kind of like where we are in survival mode at times, right? Like mentally. And so your system has been survival mode for all these years. Now it comes to your 40s. Things change, right? Your metabolism even slows down more. If you're not training as the capacity that you were training in your 20s and you didn't continue that, right? You can't pick up the dumbbell that you were picking up at your 20s now because you weren't doing it consistently. But a factor that I like to highlight is that it's not really an age.
Right.
Does age play a factor? Absolutely, right? You're older, but it's mainly the habits throughout the 20s to the 40s that really get you there. Because let me tell you, I went to this yoga studio, hot yoga studio that my husband got me into.
Right.
And I'm in there and I'm seeing everybody and they're like in their 50s and 60s, like years old. I'm here huffing and puffing like I couldn't breathe. And these ladies are like upside down doing handstands and like everything. And I'm just like, man.
Yeah.
Like, how is a 60-year-old like that's a beautiful. So a lot of the times and you cut yourself, right? You're like, oh, maybe that's a misconception, right? Like about the age. Like it really is. Like at times we put ourselves in like this box of like, well, what do 40-year-olds are lifting now?
Right. And on top of that, see, here's the other thing, right? As we're talking, I'm realizing what I did in my 20s with my metabolism being so high and everything, which what I really did was very minimal. And me seeing the results of what I got by doing minimal things, I thought that was just going to continue out through life.
Yes, talk about
Right?
it.
So it's kind of like, okay, I'll just do this and I'll get back in shape. Little do I know that I didn't condition my body to go above and beyond throughout my 20s and 30s, right? So now I'm in my 40s and here I think I'm going to do the same thing I did in my 20s, but I haven't conditioned my body to do more than what the typical like 20-year-old would do, which is minimal to get the results that they got. So it's kind of like, okay, now my body's probably looking at me like, you crazy.
Exactly. Like, what are you doing, my guy?
You think we're in the same space? We're not in the same space. Get to work.
Exactly.
So now, okay, so bet, right? So I was in the military in my 20s, so that's a whole different other factor, right? So it's kind of like, okay, now I look at it, and as I was saying before, I got to do more. And I'm always the type of guy that I'm willing to do the work, but I just need to stay focused. And there's a lot of distractions, right? And the distractions are not necessarily bad. Kids, wife, house, everything you have to do, right? But again, back to our main point, we got to connect with ourselves.
Yeah.
We got to take care of ourselves first before we could take care of others, right? So I need to find that balance that tells my body, my mind, everything about me. Okay, we're going to focus on you during this time frame of the day moving forward.
Yes.
Not a timeline, not in 3 months I'm going to get back in shape. Just change the lifestyle and move forward. And you could eat.
Yes.
It's okay.
A lot.
You don't have to starve. Don't tell me that because I'll go ahead and just start.
I'm telling you, you have to do it the smart way.
Yeah, so but I like a challenge. So, but I just need to make sure I focus on the challenge because once I get distracted,
Well,
I go
that's
off
a lot
balance.
that's everybody. Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. Like I always tell my girls, I'm like, the person that has 6 packs, it doesn't mean they have less problems than you.
Wow. Yeah, that's very true. Very true.
They don't.
Sometimes they may have more and they're challenging themselves in the gym to kind of like release that stress.
Exactly.
Wow, that's true. That's true. In a world of busy schedules, right? I'm pretty sure your schedule's busy too.
Yeah.
How do you find time for yourself and then find the strength to motivate others? Because I'm pretty sure you get tired too. You get tired of what you're doing too. I get it, gym. I get it, you're on a journey. But even if we're on a journey, like I'm in this podcast journey as well, like it gets tiring, right? How do you connect? Like what do you do for yourself to help motivate others? Because I'm pretty sure people are looking at you and saying, okay, I need motivation. I need you to motivate me. And I see you posting clips of people transforming and stuff like that. And that's great. But I'm pretty sure at some point you want to stop. You want to take a break. What do you tell yourself to not take that break?
I do take the break.
Oh, okay. He's like, I need a break.
Yeah.
We'll reset in 5 minutes.
Break. Well, I do like the way that you have to see how you go about it, right? Like I have the mentality of now knowing when to challenge myself, like when to challenge my body. So last week I was sick, right? And I was still showing up at the gym.
Yeah.
And some people were like, wow, you got to take a rest. I'm like this and that. Well, I know how my body can handle how much it can.
Right.
But there are times where I do take the break. Like rest is also essential in your fitness journey. And I feel like that's where a lot of people burn out. Because a lot of people feel they need to show up 5 times and work out. They have to do, the 100 setups. They need to be like super strict to like everything. And it's this mentality of like all or nothing, right? It's either I'm all in or I can't do it.
That is true.
And so I'm more of like, listen, you can go in, right? But if you need a break, take a sit, do what you need to do, and come back to it.
I will say, though, some people, they probably can't take that break because they know that if they take that break, everything stops.
Well, does that rely on taking the break or does that rely on the...
I think that people, and, us having this conversation being so important, I think that people don't necessarily want to take a break because they know if they take a break, they stop, like I mentioned before. But I think that people are more focused on the quick results, because I'm sure you're going to receive a lot of customers that they want quick results. And if they start seeing it, they don't want to stop, because if they feel if they stop, they'll go back to their old self.
Yes.
Everything is a challenge.
But then that goes all with the old nothing mentality, right?
Right.
So I have a lot of people that come to me and be like, I need you to yell at me. I need you to I need motivation. I need you to do this. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Drill sergeant.
I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not doing none of that. At the end of the day, what I do teach them is the importance of the reason they're doing it. I'm telling you, it all goes back to why you're doing it.
Right.
If you don't connect with it, if you don't connect with yourself in that sense, and so that's the majority of people, what people give up through the process. I'm 100% sure if you didn't have the vision that you have for this podcast, you would have given up in the process.
Oh, yeah.
It goes back to fitness, right? If you do not understand because everybody has a different channel for motivation.
Right.
Right? You may do it for your kids, right? Somebody may do it for their health. Right. Others may do it because their family members, they have a history of certain diseases and certain things that they're like, I don't want to be that person, right?
Right.
So everybody has a different sense of motivation. And even though there's a lot of outsources that you can do, right? Everybody's like, oh, well, you put on a cute outfit on and you get motivated. Which is true. That has happened to me, right? Sometimes I'm tired and I'm like, I put a cute outfit and I'm like, damn, I look good. Let me go to the gym because I remember where this was at. But what about when you're at the beginning of your journey? That no matter what you put on, you don't have the confidence.
That's the toughest part right there.
Right? And so I teach them to really lock in with the reason you're starting this. And a lot of the time it's we don't really find the time. We have to create the time. I didn't have the time when I started. I started last year, locked in November 19.
Wow. Right
before the holidays. I'm listen, if I do it during the holidays and I survive, I can do this, right? And so for me, it was so I feel when it comes to finding time, it's really taking inventory of your time. Do you work from your phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Now I do. With this podcast and everything, yeah, I do.
Okay. So when you work from, even if I work from my phone as well, right? So for me, I started taking inventory of my time. And so I would literally, it's a quick hack. You go to Generals, you see your screen time. Even if you work from your phone, you also see the apps that you use. Right. I used to be on Instagram
40 hours.
Listen.
40 hours a week.
Way above the time that I was supposed to be working, Wow, yeah. And so you realize okay, well, if I'm investing this amount of times to these distractions, you have the time, right? It really all depends on managing your time, right? And priorities. I think it really comes down to prioritizing your time.
Prioritizing yourself.
Yes.
Right. That doesn't mean that it takes away from anybody else's, your priority to somebody else, like your kids or anything. But also, I started doing this. Me and my wife, we have a shared calendar where we put everything of the week, nice. Right? So now it's okay, now remember this time. But now we have a set app that we can look at and say, remember this and this and that. But within that time frame, you could also add gym time, me time, walk time, whatever it is, right? Just so you could keep track. And once you get on schedule with yourself and you're adding yourself as a priority, it'll help you develop. Nothing happens instantly. Yeah. All this quick gratification, we're living in a microwave era, right? People want things immediately. But it takes time. One thing about your business model that I'm starting to learn and really like is that you also add a big element of mental health. You need to see where people are mentally. It's not about instant gratification. We need to see where you are specifically in your mind. How do you see yourself? What is the purpose? The exercising, the 6-pack, everything else, that's an added bonus.
That will come.
That's an added bonus. Yeah. But once you start focusing on yourself, you start looking at food different. You start loving people different. Like everything, it's like what you get, you give.
Yeah.
Or what you get, whatever. You get, you give.
We get it. You give and you get.
All that stuff. But it's kind of like you start feeling better about yourself. You start sharing more with your family and friends. Like you start like loving them more, as long as everybody's in the same page, right?
Let's talk about that.
Oh, let's talk about that, because that was one of my questions, because I was like, the support system. Let's talk about that, because, you know, I will say within this process of the podcast, and I've mentioned this before, I felt a type of way for the support that I was getting, but that stopped a long time ago when I realized this is your vision. This is your projection of what you want to see. Everything else will come later, right? Just fulfill your vision, and whatever comes, comes. And great energy will come and all that good stuff. So your support system initially, time out.
Yo, I don't know how to pray.
She's like,
I'm dying. Hold on. Say that thing.
I'm gonna leave that in. We're gonna leave that in.
Yeah, seriously. We're gonna have to put a camera right there. Like, oh, that happened.
No, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Like he wants
Please.
me to like chip in,
Please, yes.
but like I told you before, I feel like the vision that God gave you wasn't meant for everyone to see.
Wow.
So it's okay if everybody else is not on the same page with you, because the vision was for you.
Wow.
Specifically.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that. We take things so personal sometimes. And it's like, no, this was your calling. This was only for you. Right. Everybody has their journey and their own visions of what their life should be like, or their goals and stuff like that.
Wow.
So this was meant for you.
Yeah.
That's true. And I love that. I love to add to that, because there's always one person in the household that gets called.
Wow.
Right? Usually it's the mom.
Yeah.
Like usually
Yes.
is the woman.
Right.
Right? For a lot of reasons, right? Like after they have kids, like they start to realize like the identity changes so drastically that they forget like who they were before the kids, right? Or they have
Right.
this like social pressure of like snapping back to where they were before.
Keeping old clothes.
Right.
You know, making sure they snap back. Yeah.
Yeah, la faja. Like
All that
everything
stuff.
comes, right? And so a lot of the times is if you're getting that tug that, hey, like I gotta do something, you're the person that's gonna change the entire household. But it really starts with you. Yeah. Because if you think about it, you know, we're in our 30s, right? You're over there, you're 40 club, baby. We're not gonna talk about
I just made it to my 40s. Okay.
We're gonna put we're in the 30s, right?
Listen.
But
I feel
in
like
our
I'm 20.
culture-
I feel like I'm 20. I just want to say that. I,
You
feel like,
good,
I just need to
good.
like look like I'm 20, but I'm almost there. I'm not almost there. I'm lying. That's a lie. I'll be there sometime next year.
next Monday.
Vamos a empezar lunes. We're gonna start Monday, baby. That's it. Peloton, get ready for me, baby.
Oh my gosh. So
You lost the train of thought, right? We was talking about purpose and all that.
yeah, pero iba a decir algo y pegar.
The head of the
head of the household.
It goes to the women and
The head of the house. Oh, that's what it was. That we're in our
Right.
20s and our 30s. And we're just learning about how to feed our bodies.
Right.
I remember, like, just think about it. You are teaching out your children that are probably like 2, 3 years old, or probably in your womb, because I have pregnant ladies now in my program.
Right.
And you're leaving them a fortune, because your body, it's literally like your temple, like, you know, in a sense. And so, like, if you're healthy, you have everything else.
Wow.
So in that sense, it's like, man, like yes, you're investing in yourself, right? And nobody's around supporting.
Right.
But later down the road, those people will thank you. Like sometimes you really just had to separate yourself and pour into you to give yourself more value to then help those around you after.
Right. You know, because like my sister just said, the vision was for you. And people not understanding and not seeing it doesn't mean it's personal.
Yeah.
You know, it just means that, you know, it's funny, man, because I feel that now that, you know, like I'm focusing more on my mental health and stuff like that, and I'm realizing what God is telling me and what my purpose is, I'm also realizing that God will put you in tough situations, in to have tough conversations with people that you don't necessarily want to have.
Yeah, I know.
And it's kind of like, you know, no, you need to have that conversation to separate for this moment because I need you to be clear for you to fulfill my vision for you.
I also feel like he uses people in like the different journeys where you're at. And so when you started your journey, right, you felt some type of way in a sense of like you probably weren't getting the support that you were expecting. But God uses certain people to get you started because
Right.
it gets you excited like about the ideas, right? You guys were talking, you're like, oh my God, yeah, this will be great.
Right.
And so you're like, you start and then you look and you're probably like, well, where you at? Like, you
Right,
know,
right.
nobody's here. But then God fulfills that with a different type of people because now you're in a different journey.
Right. Right.
You're on the next level.
You're in the next level. And so even though during the time, you know, you're not understanding it. And it's important to talk about that because when you're in the journey of whatever journey you're on that it's new, that it does get lonely in a path, like in that sense, right? Like it does get, even though I do have my backbone, which is my husband, like this man, God bless him. Like he's the one that I'm like, what do you think about this? Like right after work, and he's like, "Ay, Dios mío," like I just like, you
But
know,
that's your solid,
that's my solid backbone. Like that's
concrete
that, yes,
backbone.
you
Yes.
know, physically, right? Because I asked God, and then I'm like, maybe He's gonna use you now to give me the answer. So what do you
Right.
think? You know,
Right.
but when you are in that process, it does get through a lonely journey, which is why it's so important to find the community.
Yes.
Like there is a community for everything and everyone out there.
Right.
Eventually, if you're open to it, it will come. And I'm huge in community. With my girls, like you're seeing the transformation that I'm posting, and that's just like highlights of it. I mean, there's really like there's greatness happening that I'm just like, wow, like I get amazed like with stories that they come and tell me, and I'm like,
Right.
that's all God's work. Like I'm just
You
there,
just
like,
was the vessel at that
that's
moment
it.
for them.
Yeah, 100%, you
Right.
know, but community, it's everything. And I say that because a lot of the women, which I always say, like, it's normally like the woman that like really gets the reach, like in a household for some reason.
Right.
At least that's what I'm attracting, you know, at the
Right.
moment. Sometimes the husbands are like, well, we used to do this together, and it's probably related to like an unhealthy habit that now doesn't really
Exist.
resonate
Right.
with the lifestyle that she's trying to form. And there's just like sort of this connection that
Right.
happens, right?
Right.
You're not gonna divorce your husband, right? Over like the fact that you're changing
Your
your
lifestyle,
eating habit,
right.
your lifestyle. But there are disconnections. And so I would always like to know from a husband's point of view.
Okay.
This is a tough question.
Go ahead.
What is it that men, like that husbands go through when they see their wives like really fully changing the way they're eating, their lifestyle? Like what is there a threat that it feels? Is there a discomfort of, you know, now you having to be forced to change? Like what does that look like?
You know, with a lot of men, that's a great question. With a lot of men, and of course, I could speak for the man's perspective. It's all ego. We got to dismantle that ego, and a lot of us have a tough time dismantling, breaking down, destroying that ego. We like the things how they were. A lot of men feel like because they provide, because they protect, because they're, you know, the man of the household, everything has to remain the same. If something changes, it can't happen. I could tell you I'm not like that, but I could see, I could understand the mind frame behind it. And it all, listen, we're gonna go deep because
Go deep.
it's all how you were raised as well, and how your father was raised. So generationally, we're coming from a third world country. My grandfather, for example, and I'm gonna take a left turn, but I'm gonna get to what the point is. Real quick, my grandfather, he was who he was, had like 16 kids. And I'm talking about my dad's side.
Wow.
My dad was one of them. He provided however he could, lived in a poor neighborhood, third world country. And then my father came along, got the education he got to 8th grade. I think by the grace of God and pathways, right? Because he met my mother, and him got together. They ended up coming here, right? So now I have my upbringing based on my dad's upbringing, based on his dad's upbringing, right? So it's all what you know and what you're willing to learn once you're an adult, right? Because with men, a lot of men, and I feel this strongly, and it's not until you do the work on yourself and you look at yourself clearly in the mirror that you say you need to change your ways. You just take the habits that you learn and you just throw them out there to the next generation. So for me, I could tell you I used to think that way. I could be honest with that until I had my daughters. When I had my daughters, it kind of like, okay, I have to be way different than how I was brought up. And there were a lot of things that my father, me growing up, I looked at myself, I was like, I'm never going to be that version of you, right? And, I had common sense, of course. But with me, I was always seeking knowledge. I was that person. I was like looking at other cultures and learning and just YouTubing, and not YouTubing, like that's the library, but reading and, just figuring things out. And to this day, I'm still doing that work. So when you go back to like the mindset of a man, when a woman changes habits and stuff like that, for me at this point in my life, and my wife is doing those habit changes,
Awesome.
I'm changing with her. But a lot of men won't do that.
Right.
A lot of men won't do that. And for me, this is my journey, right? My example of what I'm gonna tell you is my daughters helped me more to be able to learn more and be more knowledgeable on how I'm supposed to treat my queen.
But see how that works? Like that, they're your motivators.
Oh, 100%. I look at them and I'm like, I need to change the way I eat. I need to change the way I am. I need to change the way I parent. I need to like make sure that I set them up for their journey, right? And not hinder them, because and again, I'm going back to my dad and my granddad, they were working off fear. Mm-hmm. They didn't accept change. They didn't want to change.
It was resistance.
They were resistant on anything that changed in the household. I can tell you, growing up, me and my sister experienced that, right? But I'm gonna be the difference. Now things are gonna, with me, things are gonna change, and you're gonna see a whole different side of what parenting looks like, how I should treat your mother in front of you, right? It matters because they're looking at all that. If mom makes a change in her healthy habits, I'm gonna get on that with her, help her and support, and help her reach her full potential. Yeah. And who knows, maybe I might gain something from that too. And even if I don't, I'm here to support.
Right.
So there are a lot of husbands, there are a lot of so-called marriages that may not succeed because the man doesn't allow that change of mind frame.
Right.
So.
And I feel like there's a time period for them, right? Because eventually they get on board, from what I've seen, right? But it's so interesting always how like there's like a fight and
a difference of dynamic.
Yeah, but I love how you mentioned like it really goes back into the ego role, right?
Right.
Of having that control.
It does.
Like into the what plays out.
You mentioned something key earlier. Your husband is your backbone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you right now, my wife is 100% my backbone as well. You probably don't know this. I'm surrounded by females in this house. My daughters, my niece, my mom, my wife, my sister, my niece, all of them are my backbone, right? and they help me understand and see things that I'm not seeing, even throughout this process. Again, we're going back and forth, right? Because in our process, we need to pinpoint what was the point that allowed me to continue to move forward.
Yeah.
And it was these conversations. My sister just mentioned something key that she always tells me all the time in the podcast. You just said it. And she told me, this is your vision. My wife will tell me the same thing. So if I didn't have these beautiful, wonderful women telling me and feeding me that information when I needed it, this wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And because like I told you, I've been wanting to give up.
Well, I
something doesn't
think it's
allow me
funny too when it's like when you're really on your purpose, like that's when everything else like starts attacking more.
Right.
And so that's really like you have great reminders like that, right? That you keep in your
100%.
kind of like in your back of the mind as to like whenever you wanted to give up, like it was this reminders of like there's a reason why you started this.
Right.
This is bigger than you.
It definitely is.
It is not your job to see where it's going to end, but it is your job to continue it.
I got to continue the journey. And now I'm in love with it.
I love that.
I'm in love with it. And I may go, like I said, I may go through highs and lows, but I'm not stopping. So the question becomes like, for your customer base, and, I'm pretty sure you deal with a lot of different customers in different phases of their life, either wanting to change their lifestyle or their nutritional habits. How important would the mental health aspect being lined up with their fitness goals? How important is that in your line of work?
It's everything. Like, I really need to know and understand where they're at mentally and what challenges they face around them. What is their environment? Are they surrounded by support? Are they not surrounded by support?
Right.
Have they tried many attempts in the past and they have failed at this, achieving this lifestyle? Like I have this recently, client, not recently, but she's in my community. And I remember when she first started, like she would sort of be very resistant. Like she didn't, she joined, but she didn't really believe that this was gonna work for her. And like we're 3 months down the line and she generally came to me and she's like, you know what? Like this is also possible for me. And like I get the chills because sometimes we stop ourselves from doing something else and achieve that next level because we believe we don't have what it takes to get there, right? And that's really when it comes down to reaching for help. Like there is one thing that I've had to learn myself because I'm someone who, like I mentioned, I map out the timeline.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm someone who's like, I need to figure it out. I'm the one that needs to do it. Yeah, it's my vision. Yeah, it's my work. But nobody does it alone.
Nobody.
You don't get to the next level by yourself. And if you do, it's a very lonely road. Yeah. That when you reach there, you got nobody to celebrate with. And then what's the point?
Got to pat yourself on the back.
You do pat yourself in the back, right? It's great. But if you're there alone, like...
Right.
All right, so who you did it for? For yourself? Like, not that it's anything wrong with that, but during the process, there's somebody else, or like you may have thought you did it alone, but you never probably gave credit to those around you.
That's another thing.
Right?
Yeah.
Because anybody reaches a point where they doubt themselves, where they think that, like I said, that's not a possibility for them.
Right.
Or they don't have it in them. Like everybody always needs that little reminder. And so I always like to link and understand where they're at mentally, and I support them in whatever way it is that I believe. And something that I like to do is I speak their language.
Okay.
Right? So in a sense of like, you're telling me, right, that you count your calories now. You were in the military.
Right.
By you telling me that, I know you're disciplined. Like, I know that you're somebody that it's like, if I tell you, hey, do A through Z, you go right in it and you lock in, right? And so I know you're going to have phases where you're not going to know how to ask for help. If you haven't worked on this, right?
Right.
You're not going to know how to ask for help. But I'm going to think, okay, well, you reached out to me. in a sense, but you're not gonna like. There are gonna be phases in that journey that you may think it's silly to ask for that, and so I'm just gonna be providing you the tools. Like, hey, in case you need this, here's that, right?
Right.
Understanding your reasons, your whys. Your kids are your whys, right? So I know when you're like, you start telling me, hey, I didn't have time. I had the podcast. I had this. I had that. It's like, well, let's remember why you started it.
Right.
Let's take it back there, right?
Let's put your priority times in your calendar.
Exactly.
Right. It's tough because I could see that a lot of people, they may want to start. They don't know where to start. But like you said, you just spoke about that journey that your customer went through, that it took her like 3 months to figure out, right? Because even as you're starting the process, when I started this, I was doubting myself all throughout the process. It wasn't until I clicked and it said, God's vision is here. I need to fulfill this, right? And it's important and I'm glad that you mentioned, like, you tap into where they're at in their life. What's their support system? What's the triggers, right? Because you have to identify those things in order to help somebody clear that pathway to succeed, to prioritize, to start a routine. And it's not that tough when you start removing obstacles away from you.
Yeah.
So identifying those obstacles before they even start, because if you have a lot of obstacles in front of you and you want to start something, you're just going to stop.
Right.
Once you bump into that obstacle. But, just identifying and removing things, not physically, not you physically, but the customers themselves, or even me, for example, I need to start removing things away from me that I saw as a roadblock so I could have a clear way to get to my goal.
100%. And a lot of the times it's your own self.
A million times.
It's you really, like, it's basically, like, what I like to do is I put you in a corner where you can't run from yourself anymore.
Oh, man.
Like, there's no.
It's you versus you
Yeah.
at that point.
Exactly. You got me? Like, it's somebody, like, which hasn't happened, right? But it's really taking that accountability of, like, okay, well, you can give me all the reasons and I'll help you, right? Like, find the solution, find the ways.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the more, like, they start to realize the more they give me, the more I like, well, what about this? And, like, let's take a look at that. And they get tired. Like, it gets to a point where you get tired running from yourself. Yeah. Like, you stop running.
All you're finding is excuses to give, to step away from the challenge. And you're like, nope, let's remove that.
Correct.
Let's put a mirror right in front of you every time.
It's right in front. And it's like, it gets to be to that point where it's like, all right, let me lock in.
Some people may need that. A lot of people actually may need that, because
everyone needs that.
Once you, like, realize that your only challenge is you, your only roadblock is really you. You're stopping yourself from achieving whatever goal you're trying to achieve. And that goes for anything. Fitness, not fitness, anything in life.
Exactly.
You got to turn around, face that mirror.
Yeah. And not a lot of people are meant to face it. Like, they're not ready to face it.
Right.
I have a lot of people that have reached out, and I feel like they're ready because I see it in them.
Right.
And they're like, not yet. I'm not ready to, like, see if I could fail at it. Like, it's that intense.
Wow. And a lot of people are scared. It's funny because a lot of people are also scared of failure. And failure is a part of the process.
Yeah. It's
Those
not
lessons,
the prettiest part, but it's part of it.
right? But once you get over that,
oh, yeah.
it becomes a lesson to you.
Oh, if I got it.
You start looking for more
Yeah.
I start looking for more L's to then convert them into lessons.
That is so true.
So now I'm on a journey to see everything that has been stopping me, tackle those obstacles, and keep moving forward. Question for you, though. So you're coming from, because I know your sisters. You're the youngest of three.
I am.
All three of you are kind of like entrepreneurs in your own stance, right? Was this embedded in you at a very young age to become entrepreneurs?
I think it was like an intergenerational transmission. Like, it wasn't something that hey, like, grow up, like, open your business, like, do it. Like, it was, like, in my bloodline because my dad had his own business, even though I wasn't raised with him, but he had his own. My mother ended up, like, opening her own, like, hair salon. And so, but the background really was get an education, get your secure job, and, you know, continue that path. That was really the road. And for me, that's what I took, right? That was like the I wouldn't call it, well, for me, it was a safe zone because that's all I knew to do.
Right.
Until I reached the point in my career that I noticed that I was making the money that I had envisioned to make. I was surrounded in that industry by billionaires that money wasn't an issue.
Right.
And when I was interacting with them, they were probably just as miserable as I was.
Wow.
And I'm like, ¿y qué entonces? I was like, I'm over here killing myself, like reaching the money, like reaching the bag.
Reaching
and
the
it's like,
milestones.
yes, and like you get there and then you realize like, oh, like that it wasn't money that was gonna satisfy, right? Because we reach, like, for me, my mentality was, okay, well, because my mom worked a lot. Like I barely saw her, right? And so for me, it's like, well, if you have money, then you have the time. Right? Like,
Right.
like when I have my own family, if I'm financially stable, then great. But then you don't do the math where it's like, well, if you work for somebody else, they're paying you for your time. So you got to be present.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I'm there, I'm like, this is not for me. But my entrepreneur story is very different from all the stories like I would read about.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, I quit my job and like I got this vision, and I'm like, damn, man, like I wish my story sounded like that, but no. You know, I took an L. Like I got fired at a new job that I had just started because I just wanted this switch. Like I wanted like something drastic to change. But I was so afraid, right? Going back to like, of just quitting. Like I couldn't do it for the life of me. It was just like, and I felt it. And it's like, no, I can't. Like, let me just get this other job. Like, you know? And I'm in this other job and like 2 months in, I remember I was like gathering like paperwork to take to my house. Like I will be there earlier, I'll leave later. Like I'll be that person because I was so hungry to learn.
Wow.
And someone came to me and was like, you're gonna get fired tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Like I'm over here like, it's like, yeah, you're gonna get fired tomorrow. Like this person doesn't like you, and like it's just and like I never came across somebody like getting fired for doing like what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, it's like people that get fired, in my mind, it's like people that don't do their job. Like they just like, you know?
Right.
Well, that happens, right? And I remember like sitting in the office and like I didn't want the job back at that time.
Right.
And I'm like, well, can you give me a criticism? Because
Well, give me a feedback.
let me learn.
What was
Like,
it?
you know,
Yeah.
what is it? And it was so funny. Like I laugh now, but then it was like, oh no, you just typed in a wrong phone number to one of like the hires, right? I was in HR. When you work in HR, you can't. Where else do you go, right? Like it's like
You're HR. You go to yourself.
Like, you're sitting there like putting a claim for yourself, and like you're the one reading it, you know. And I'm like, and I remember leaving, and I was like right in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and like Fifth Avenue, everybody has a place to go, like New York, anywhere street, right?
All the time.
And I was standing there, I'm like, I had nowhere to go. Like in my mind, it's like there's no urgency for me to go somewhere besides my bedroom and cry, right? Like it was like that. And so ever since that, like I remember making a promise to myself, and I'm like, I am not submitting an application to nobody.
Listen, speak on it, because that's where you see that you need to do stuff on your own, right? And that's where your entrepreneurial
That's
journey.
when everything started.
Wow. And it's crazy because things needed to happen a certain way, drastically.
Right. That was an L. Like in that sense, right? Like in my mind, that was a huge failure. And it was funny because you were speaking on earlier, like how much time we give to what we give, right? Like priorities. Like to me, my identity was surrounded around my career. Like that's all I knew. It was like, chasing the title and chasing the money. And like, that was really like where I was at until that was taken out. And then it's like, okay, then who are you now?
It's funny. You mentioned that. It's funny how God works. I know we're going a lot back to God, but it's all God, right?
It
because
is.
God will put
I'm
you
so
in
glad you're so open to talk about it because
Man,
I was
listen.
like, I don't want to make it like
No. Listen, God will give you clarity.
Yeah.
And you probably won't understand it at first. So he'll put you in a predicament. And if you didn't understand it and you continue doing what you're doing, he'll put you in a more tougher predicament. And then a year down the line, you're still in your path, not understanding what God is trying to put you through or understand at that point. And then he'll just crash course you. You have no choice.
Yes.
At this point, things need
He
to change.
puts you in the corner.
He puts you in the corner. My God. He puts you in the corner. Wow. And then you're looking at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that's when magic happens.
Yeah.
Right? Because now he has you all to himself, and now he injects the vision into you, and you have to fulfill it.
100%.
You've been running away from this responsibility that God gave you. But now you're gonna achieve it.
Yeah. Oh, I was
He'll
running.
remove people away from you that you love, right? You love people. You love things to do. Wow, man, listen.
He removes all distractions.
He'll
That's what he wants.
even if you don't want to disconnect.
Yeah.
Like, I was speaking to my sister yesterday. I was like, you know what? I've reached a sense of maturity and understanding that, a lot of times when you identify that you're the problem and you remove yourself away from somebody's path so they could grow, that's maturity.
Oh, yeah. And love.
That takes a lot.
You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times people think, I'm cutting people off. 2024, I'm cutting people off. If you made it to next year, whatever, right? People just have these sayings. But in reality, you're being cut off from somebody's path
Yes.
so they could grow. And that's maturity. And we all have to realize that. We all have to come to terms with that and understand that God has a lot to do with that. People have different purposes. Let's stop joking around and let's get to it.
Yes.
Yeah. We're
You know
not
what I'm
going to go to the finish line with everyone from the beginning.
And that's okay.
And it's
And
okay.
that is okay.
And that is okay.
100%.
I could love you now very close, but I could also love you from a distance.
Yes.
And that's okay.
And I'll probably love you more from a distance at this
Yeah.
point.
You know what I'm
And
saying?
wish them the best
Yeah.
always. Like, there's no hard feelings, but our time expired already.
Yeah.
It's
That's
time to
very
move to
true.
the next level.
It's time to, and you're not able
And
to make
you're
it
not,
with me.
yeah.
Right.
Listen, wow. We got into a lot today.
Yeah, we did. It was a good episode.
In hindsight, because we're always realizing things in hindsight, right? In hindsight, you look back, you say that was all God's work.
Yeah.
God needed me to crash.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He needed me to crash to hit that next level.
Yeah.
He makes you hit rock bottom, and that's where it all comes out.
You know,
Like, that's where the flowers really start
For
growing.
real.
You
I
know-
feel like I hit the basement of rock bottom.
You're all the way under.
I was like, there was a tunnel to this.
Yeah.
And I love how he like tests you too.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Listen.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember after that, I called my old job. I was like, hello.
You guys hiring?
Right? I was like, I called back and they were so happy. They were so thrilled. I was hoping, I didn't know this, but at the moment I realized, I was hoping that they would be like, no, you can't come back. I really didn't want to take the responsibility of just working on my own. It's so crazy. And I'm like this happened and they knew my work ethic. They're like, listen, we're going to give you the position that you want for this amount. And it was like a freaking dream.
Right.
This is it. And I remember sitting there and I was like, oh, really? Like, I'm like, you really gonna give me that? Like,
no.
Yeah, I was like,
That wasn't the plan.
Yeah, I was like, you were supposed to tell me no. Like, And I remember sitting there and I'm just like, I'm gonna think about it. And they're like, okay. And then like a week later, I got called they had an event. They're like, just come by. And I go by, and the director is like, this is what I want for you. And like, as I'm sitting there, my brain, it's like, this is great. This is what you wanted. This is your hit.
Right.
And my stomach, it's like, girl,
No.
this is a no.
This is a not it.
Wow.
This is not it for you. Walk away. And I remember just being like, I'm going to pass.
You know,
That's crazy.
God's challenges are great. Listen, once you realize, once I realized I'm ready for challenges, I'm ready for L's, I'm ready to learn more, I'm ready to become more knowledgeable, everything becomes more clear to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you have to give yourself up.
Yeah, surrender.
100% surrender
Yeah.
to the vision he has for you.
Yeah. And now it's like, to me, I see it more like as an excitement.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like, if I see like a path like to like coming to an end with something, I'm just like, ooh. Like, even though it's like, it's going to take away from something that I'm benefiting during that time.
Right.
I'm also like, oh, but what's coming?
Yeah, what's the next chapter?
What's next?
What's the next chapter?
Yeah, And so it's really all the way you're seeing it. And it goes back to like just the story that we are telling ourselves during that process, right? Because we can look at it as like, oh, but I was benefiting
X,
from
Y, Z.
that. And
Yeah.
like, now it's not working. Like, what is it, God? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, all right, well, that was yours to begin with. So
Yeah.
what are we doing?
What are we doing next?
Yeah, what
What's
we
the
doing
next
next?
plan?
Yeah.
You know, and me having daughters, it helped me so much become this person, right? That this was supposed to be something else. This podcast was supposed to be something else in the beginning, but now I want it to become something that you could click on any of these episodes 5 years from now, and someone will get something from it that they needed. Instead of just talking about the topics of the day. You know, you see what I'm saying? I want good information from regular, everyday people that are on their journeys, going through their paths, ups and downs, and we could talk about it today, but someone will learn from it in the future.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of this thing. I can see it clear as day. That's God's vision.
And it's happening.
You know, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to just keep learning. Finnelis, thank you so much for joining us today in the podcast. I really appreciate you. One last thing, where can new customers get more information from your business?
You can always find me at Fit Traveling. There's a link. You can book a call with me directly or just slid in the DM.
Right.
But I also have my business, which is Finnelis.mindset on Instagram. So mainly on Instagram, there's a link there to the rest of it. But that's where you can find me.
Thank you for joining. And for all the followers out there, I'm always bringing on new content, great entrepreneurs throughout their journeys. Thank you for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, or not, whatever you want to do. What I really want for this is for you to get something from it that you need. Thank you so much, Finnelis. I really appreciate you for coming. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Peace.